think people realize how important this actually is. You're spending all this time, all this money, all this energy planning this beautiful wedding, and it's like one of the most important moments of your entire life. And you need to find somebody amazing to capture that for you so that you can go back and revisit these memories. Well, hello blushing brides, and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, welcome and congrats on your engagement. I'm Kyle James, and I used to be a full-service wedding planner, and now I make videos like this, teaching girls like you how to plan your wedding. In today's video, I'm going to share with you easy steps for hiring an amazing photographer and videographer. The thing about weddings is you get one chance to shoot it. So you need an amazing photographer who can really capture these moments and capture your day so that you can look back at it for the rest of your life. So if you're ready to find an amazing photographer and maybe a videographer as well, hit that thumbs up button and let's dive in. So step one to hiring your team who is going to capture your big day is to put together a vision of what you want your photos and or your video to look like. Most people don't really know what their photography style is because this isn't really like a normal thing that you do. So I would suggest scrolling through Pinterest and creating a board for photo inspiration ideas and videos as well. You can look on YouTube and there's tons of wedding videos as well. So be sure that you're kind of looking through that and saving stuff. You don't have to know what you love about it, but start saving stuff and creating a board and creating a vision for what you want your photographer and videographer to be able to capture. You're going to need a board for this anyway to share with the photographer and videographer that you end up hiring as a shot list to make sure that they get all the shots that you want. So it's perfect to start now and start using it to create your vision and kind of collect your style and figure out what you actually are looking for. The next step is to allocate your budget. If you have not done so already, be sure that you watch my budget video. I have a free worksheet that helps you allocate your budget out to each of the different categories, but you need to know how much money you have to spend before you do anything else. You do not want to find an amazing, incredible photographer and videographer that you love so much and then find out that they're like triple your budget. So be sure that you grab that worksheet. I'll link the worksheet and the video below so that if you just need to do this really quick, you can, but then go back and be sure that you break down your budget. It's so important. I can't stress how important that is. So once you know your budget, then we can start researching your photography and videography team. The first thing that we want to do here is figure out if we are going to hire just a photographer or if you can hire a photographer and a videographer. Some people swear that you need a videographer. I personally do not. I think the photography is more important. But my rule of thumb is if you have a budget for this category of $4,000 or more to spend on your photography and videography, then you can hire both. If you do not have a budget that high, I highly recommend just hiring an amazing photographer because they'll be able to capture your day just as good as like a videographer can. You will still get the memories and still be able to look back and kind of re-experience your day if you have amazing photos. If you do have a lower budget and you decide to split it, there's a chance that you'll get kind of crappy photos and kind of crappy video, and neither of which are going to actually truly help you to relive your day or really capture the moments. So yeah, if you have a budget under $4,000, I suggest just finding an amazing photographer and going with that. So the next thing you're going to do once you have your budget and you know whether you want a photographer or both a photographer and videographer is to hop on a website like The Knot or Wedding Wire and start researching local photographers in your area. So be sure that you're sorting by budget and looking at photographers in your budget. And then you're going to look at their work, look through their photos, look through their videos, compare their photos and stuff to the board, the vision board that you put together as well. So I usually suggest finding a photographer first and then asking them if they know of a videographer. But if the video is like super, super important to you, then you might want to find the videographer first, just so that you can be sure that you have a little bit more budget if you need it to be able to book an incredible videographer, and then that can kind of just dip into your photographer budget. Yeah, so just decide which one's more important to you, photography or videography. If one's not, then I would just start with photography. So just start with one or the other, find a few local vendors that you love, and go through their photos and go through their website. Here are a few things to look for when you're actually looking through their work to decide if you like it or not and if it's going to work for your wedding. Number one is, what is their style? So for this one, you're looking for, do they do mostly posed photos or do they have mostly candid photos for each of their weddings? And which ones do you like more? If posed is more important to you than the candid stuff, then you'll want to find a photographer who does really amazing posed photos. And then if the candid stuff is more important to you, then obviously you'll be looking for somebody who does the candid stuff better and puts more focus into that. The next one is, are the images crisp and clear? If you find a photographer that the images look crappy for any of their other weddings, I would suggest just ditching that one and go back to find a new one, because there's a good chance that that could happen for your wedding. And like I said, you only get one chance to shoot this. So you don't want somebody who is going to mess this up. The next one is, how is the lighting? Do you like how the lighting looks in the photos? Does it look intentional? If the photos are really dark that they have on their website and you can't really see what's going on, that is not a good sign. Usually professional photographers know what they're doing with this. But there might be a photographer that has a specific style that you like more than others. So first you want to look for the quality, obviously, and then if there is a specific style that you're seeing that you really like, be sure that you write that down. The next question you'll want to ask yourself is if they did a good job capturing the emotion of the big day. Obviously, weddings are super emotional, so if that does not come through in their photos and you can't feel what the bride and groom are feeling, then you'll want to move on and find a different photographer. You definitely want to make sure that you have somebody that really captures those moments for you, especially if you're just doing photography. The other thing to look for is look at the bride and groom's faces in the photos on the photographer's website and see if they look comfortable or if they look awkward. If the photographer is super awkward and you can't connect with them, that's totally gonna come through in your photos. And you can definitely avoid this by looking at the people's faces in the photos and see if they look comfortable and natural and stuff before you even meet with the photographer or anything. You'll also wanna look at the content of the photos. So is the photographer's intent clear? Are they shooting specific things? You don't want somebody who's just taking random shots everywhere like your drunk cousin on their cell phone. You want to make sure that they obviously capture special moments that happen throughout the entire day and it's not just random shots. And then the next thing you'll want to look at is if you like how that photographer's photos are edited. So there is shooting the actual photos and capturing the day, and then there's also editing them that is a huge deal. That kind of brings the final product all together. So be sure that you're looking through all their photos and seeing if you like the coloring in their photos and the lighting and stuff like that. And be sure that you like their style there as well. For the videographer, when you're watching the videos, you'll want to make sure that you like their transitions and the music that they put in, and also that there is quality sound as well. And then the last thing to look for when you are doing your research is reviews. So the Knot and Wedding Wire, as well as Google, Yelp, there are reviews everywhere. So be sure that you don't just read the top one, read through a bunch of them and see if somebody did give them 1 star, be sure that you read that review as well as the 5-star reviews. Reviews are everything nowadays, and the fact that they're so readily available makes your research so much easier. So if you find a photographer that has a bunch of pretty negative reviews, I would just suggest moving on. Don't take your chances with them. But if you do find one who has mostly great reviews and then maybe they have one or two that aren't so great, you could still totally interview them and see if they'll work for you. And you can even ask them about those negative interviews and see what they say and see how they react. I think that you can tell a lot about a person and they'll tell you the story or whatever. Especially if it's something like one-off and crazy that is not something that usually happens with them. But if they get like super defensive, or it seems like you can just read people. Just be very cautious if there are negative reviews, and be sure that you talk about it, and be sure that you ask them like, what are you going to do to make sure that this doesn't happen again, or that this doesn't happen to us? And then of course, like while you're going through all this stuff, be sure that you're saving photos on their website that you really love into that Pinterest board, so that you can show them shots that you want for your wedding as well. The next step is to interview and pick. So I suggest interviewing 3 photographers and 3 videographers. The very first one you interview, you might like really love them and really love their work, and it might be somebody who somebody recommended to you. But if you at least interview a couple of people, then you'll have a better comparison to decide who's really perfect for your wedding. Like I said, this is so important. This is the only thing you're gonna have to look back on to like re-experience your big day and to revisit those memories. So it's super important that you find the right person for you. And just because somebody was the right person for your best friend or for one of your family members or whatever, does not necessarily mean that they're going to be the right photographer or videographer for your wedding. Here are a few of my tips for interviewing your potential photographers and videographers. Number 1 is meet them in person. If this is not possible, then meet them on a video Skype call. There's just something about meeting somebody face to face. Like you can feel if their vibe matches your vibe basically, or if they have something weird going on or whatever. Or if they show up late, or there's just so many different things that you can really tell if people are putting effort into it and they care about it, and they're professional, that you can see when you meet them in person that you might not necessarily be able to pick up on over the phone. Along with that, just pay attention to how comfortable you feel with them. If the person kind of like creeps you out, that's how you're gonna feel on your wedding day as well, and that's gonna come through in your photos. You do not want to have a creeped out look in your photos. You want somebody who you're super comfortable with, so that you can really be in the moments, and that they can capture those moments for you. The next thing is to notice how professional they come off. Are they speaking professionally? Did they dress professionally? You want someone who has their stuff together. The next thing you want to look for is if they listen to your ideas and are open to like looking at the Pinterest board that you put together and like working with you to come up with the perfect photos for your big day. Or if they're more just like, this is how I do things, this is my style, either this works or not. You want somebody who's gonna listen to you and work with you. You just really wanna make sure you have somebody who is going to capture your style, your big day, your way. You're the customer, you're the one paying for this. I know that they're the artist. There is a good mix of them still listening to you and like kind of capturing your vision and incorporating their artistic ability as well. And then the last thing you're looking for, and this might be something that you ask them specifically, you want somebody who can really go with the flow and not be too uptight about things being a certain way. But you also want them to be able to take control of the situation if they need to. Usually every single piece of your wedding doesn't go exactly how you think it's gonna go, but something better happens. So you want somebody who's not gonna like interrupt the natural flow of events, but you're also gonna want somebody who can like really wrangle like all the family members to get the family photos, and they can kind of like take control and give direction. And then the last step is to book. So once you have interviewed a few people and you find somebody who you really love, then you can go ahead and move forward with booking them. Before you sign any contracts, be sure that you read it very, very carefully. You need to be sure that for all of your wedding vendors, you're really reading through these contracts thoroughly and making any adjustments possible. I feel like people sometimes get a little bit intimidated by contracts. But the thing is you can literally take a pen and cross things off and write things in and just make it so that it really fits exactly what you talked about with that vendor, and don't be afraid to ask for changes. Their contracts are made in a way that has their best interest in mind, but you can totally make sure that that is true and that's totally fine, but that your interests are covered as well. If you just leave it as is and don't really look through it, there's a good chance that if something happens that it's not gonna be in your favor. So just be sure that you're checking it really thoroughly, and here are a few things to look for in your contracts. Number one, be sure that they have all of the events, dates, times, and specific addresses where they will be expected to shoot, including your engagement session, getting ready photos if they're shooting those, rehearsal, dinner, all that stuff. Be sure that every single thing that you talked about them doing is in that contract. The contracted number of hours, plus any overtime fees and break times. Most of your vendors will expect breaks, so be sure that you discuss this and have that laid out in the contract of what that's gonna look like, so that you don't have a photographer who is going to take a break right when you're cutting the cake or something. The next thing you wanna check for is that it has the photographer's name and the number of assistants that they will have with them. The photographer's name is especially important if it's a bigger photography company who has more than one photographer, because you want to make sure you get the specific photographer that you chose and not just some random person that they send that day. So be sure that the photographer's name is specifically in the contract. You want to be sure that it has their emergency substitute policy should they not be able to attend for some reason. Be sure that that's in the contract, and be sure that you discuss that with your photographer. You want their shot list policy, plus specific events they will or won't cover. Some photographers really aren't into taking direction, and if you don't really have an opinion on this, that's totally fine to have a photographer who is very specific on what they want to do. But if you do have a list of different shots that you really want, be sure that they are totally good with you sending them that and them working with you on getting the shots that you really want. You want to know the number of proofs you'll get and how and when you will receive them. Be sure that they have a specific date range in when you will start receiving your photos. You don't want somebody who it's going to take them a year to edit your wedding photos. You'll also want to know when and how you'll receive all the final photos. And then if you are ordering prints through your photographer, be sure that they lay out exactly how and when you'll receive those as well. Be sure that the contract includes the expected dress code for the photographers and their assistant. You don't want somebody who's going to show up in jeans to your formal wedding. Usually this is a total normal thing, so they'll have it in their contract already, but usually they just kind of wear black and wear nicer clothes. But be sure that it's there, and be sure that you discuss this. Next, you want to be sure that copyright details are in the contract. So whether you can share them on social media, usually nowadays people are totally good with you sharing them on social media. Just be sure that you talk about this, and then it is in your contract that you can do this. You want an itemized list of fees and total cost. You want your reorder price and process. So if you are ordering prints, you want to know how much that's going to cost and how to do that. You want to know the deposit amount and the due date for that, the final payment amount and the due date for that, their refund and cancellation policy should something happen where you do need to cancel. The other thing you want to check for in your contract is if they have a disparagement clause. A disparagement clause basically says you cannot speak negatively about someone. And this is something that wedding vendors do put in their contracts sometimes. So if you signed a contract that had this in there and then you went on Yelp or The Knot or anywhere and left a bad review, they could totally sue you for that. I think that this is a practice that's kind of going away because it doesn't really make sense. But be sure that you know if there's one in there, and be sure you discuss it before you sign. You can always ask them to take it out. And then a few things for the videographer contract if you are going to hire one that's different from the photographer contract. You want basically all those plus if the number of hours of raw footage that they agree to shoot, and then their editing process details and specific features or effects that you have agreed upon, background music that will be played, including a list of specific songs if you know which ones you want. And then, like I said, just be sure that it has everything that the photographer contract has. So many people get intimidated, or maybe they just get excited and want to get the thing signed, or they feel like sales pressure or something. But it's so important to sit down and read through the contract and be sure that it all looks good. Be sure that it has all these items. Be sure that it has anything special that you may have discussed in your meetings that they're gonna do. Just get it all in writing. I've seen way too many times where wedding vendors agree to do special things for brides, they don't get it in writing, and then they're like, I don't know what you're talking about, or something changes where that's not gonna happen. Be sure that you just get everything in the contract, and then it's easy and laid out for you, and you don't have to worry about whether they're gonna do what they said because it's in the contract. I know it takes a little bit of extra time and effort to do this, but it's totally worth it, especially when you're spending thousands of dollars. If this information is helpful to you, please be sure that you hit that thumbs up button and let me know. And also be sure that you share this with your bride friends. There's a super easy little share button. Be sure that you send it over to them so that they can make sure they hire amazing photographers and videographers for their wedding as well. Also, be sure that you check out all of my other wedding planning content. And be sure that you're subscribed. I have a bunch of amazing stuff coming up. I post new videos every single Wednesday, so be sure that you're subscribed so you never miss one, and we'll see you next time. Happy planning!